Kia ora, everybody. We've got a man who has a curly last name. Niterl?
Niterl.
Niterl.
Yeah, it's Austrian.
Ah.
It's Austrian. Bloody bastard.
Yeah,
Stuck with that for the rest of my life.
yeah. Anthony, so am I right? You're hail from Christchurch, is that right?
No, negative, actually.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
Yeah. Born and bred down in, actually in South Africa, moved over to New Zealand, live in Auckland. So the Christchurch where you want to send, I've done a bit of work down there. So that's about it, really.
Yeah, so selling your soul to those crusaders, hey?
Right, yeah. Well, you gotta support the kids somehow. Pay the bills.
Yeah, mate. So, what did you do for the weekend just been? Was it an eventful one, or are you still finding the moths in your wallet after a trip to the States?
Still finding the moths in the wallet. Ryan, as you might know, I've got an incredible rubber arm. So I was actually going to put the feed up on the Friday. Ended up going for a couple of pints at the local watering hole. And then some of my friends rocked up and they had a spare ticket to the symphony orchestra. So it was a bit of a gig, and went out there. Really had a good time. You know, took a couple of glow sticks and raved till about 5 a.m. So, yeah, the carcass was in bad nick, especially coming after the week back from the States, trying to reset the sleeping patterns. But yeah, that's where I was, mate. And then, yeah, the rest of it was quite wholesome, actually. Just got sent the Hunter's Journal, all 3 copies of that. So perched on the porcelain for about 5 hours and looked at pictures. So, no, they're doing a great job.
It's not one to really have in the bathroom, eh? You can end up, someone might send out a search party for you.
Bloody oath, and that's what happened, especially in our flat. But they're doing a fantastic job and great on the irises, reading that content.
Yeah, mate. So
Taranaki's just got up, by the way.
Oh dear. Yeah. I'm not even wearing my Stag's jumper. I might have to change the name of the podcast now. It's
blasphemy. That is blasphemy.
Yeah. So you were pretty much, you're someone that gets around. You're like white on rice on most things, as you said. You're even down there with the Crusaders, but you're pretty much off the plane and onto the rock. And if anyone wants the abbreviated version of your trip, just go to the Rocks podcast, Rover, or whatever the hell they're going on.
Did you listen to it?
Yeah, well, I listened to your part anyway. And how could you continue the joke of 2 Kiwis, a Mormon, and a medicinal marijuana grower? What the hell's going on there?
So basically when we landed, the guy that I went hunting with on this trip to Idaho, Ben Tumata, you might know him, he does big game hunting, hell of a rooster. He's a Kiwi relic, really, all the way from Taihape. The guy's built like a sewing machine. And he moves like a sewing machine as well. But anyways, long story short, he obviously he guides down south in New Zealand, and he met these 2 Yanks that came over. They went for a tahr hunt with him. So we sort of did like a billeting service. We went over there and they looked after us for the first, I think it's like 4 days when we went over for our Bull Elk. One guy, I don't actually know if he was a Mormon. He came from a Christian family. I just exaggerated the yarn because I thought it was funny. So I said he was a Mormon. In Utah or around those areas, it's quite heavily dominated by Mormons. And then the other guy was a guide, and he grew medicinal marijuana, and heck of a rooster, but he was probably ripping 10, 12 bongs a day on the hunting trip. And I didn't get involved myself, but the man's stamina was incredible. He only had a couple of nut bars, but he was full of obviously the green nectar that he grew himself. But bloody funny. So that was the beginning of the joke on the rock. Obviously, I was like, we're out bush with a Mormon, a guy from Taihape, and a man who grows his own medicinal marijuana illegally in one state but sells it legally in another. And that's when Jay Reeve and Dunk sort of I thought it was the beginning of the joke, and I was the brunt of the joke because I went there with no sort of qualifications whatsoever to go for a stroll in the park, what it ended up for me. So, yeah, bloody good fun, mate. Those Rock boys are good, mate. So, yeah, go and have a listen on the Rock podcast. I think it was September the 23rd, I think the date was.
Yeah, something like that.
Easy laugh.
And you just showed off your forearms there. I picked up the bow for the first time today. I think it's your fault actually. I've been following the Cam Haynes, the Green Trees. There's a massive list of bow hunters out there on Instagram, and then sure enough, you start up that I'm going to go to the States and go hunt elk, and I'm going to do it with a bow. And you featured on Wild Meat Hunter NZ as well with George Walker, and I was like, that bastard. What's he up to with the bow? And I think it just started an itch that finally got scratched and smashed the shit out of my forearm this morning. How did that go? How did that learning curve go?
Yeah, it's never happened to me, not once. So I don't know what I'm doing right. I guess I went to archery. I think it was archery. Advanced archery. They set me up. Great team there, by the way. If you are getting started, and I bought an old bow. What was it called? A Matthews Halon 32. So quite a really good setup. It was a couple of grand actually set up, but I never had the issues of the drawstring hitting me on the way through. I saw in your Instagram video last night you had a bit of a dirty rash there. Something I wouldn't be boasting about, but a couple of my mates had a fling on my bone that happened to them as well. But I never needed an arm guard, so I guess it's just time with the crease horse. You learn what hurts and what doesn't. But it's been weird. It's been 2.5 months since I said yes to the trip. Ben just sort of dropped it in my lap. Goes, would you be interested? And I spoke to a couple of cool customers that I'm mates with, and they said, yeah, it's once in a lifetime. Do it before you have kids or whatever. Go out there and invest and do it. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a crack. And I wouldn't say I haven't looked back, but I can see how you get the inspiration from social media, like your Adam Green Trees and your Remy Warrens and stuff. They paint a picture on how cool hunting is, but how bloody hard it is as well. It's a lot of time. A lot of time on hoof, walking in, making mistakes, and I guess it's character building in the end. And I got a newfound respect for bow hunters because normally when you're using a gun, you can hit things from 500 meters away. It's and on this elk trip when we were there, we would have shot every single bull we saw, but it wouldn't have been the same. Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same.
And so you said you went with Big Ben, Big Game Hunting, NZ, and you started out with a trip with him with a person that made you look small, AB. How did your relationship with Ben sort of kick off, and was that the start of it, or was that something else that just sort of said come along?
Well, a bit of a funny story. I only really started getting into hunting maybe 6 months before that, so it's been about 6 years now. Tony Dodds, who used to be a New Zealand triathlete, hell of a great rooster, down in Wanaka, and he took me out for my first hunt. And I remember I was like, I always looked at it in the stereotypical way. I thought this looked pretty cool and manly, and I didn't want to be perceived as this sort of pretty boy from Auckland, which dressed like a metrosexual and behaved like a 12-year-old kid. So I was like, at that point in my life, I was growing a bit of a beard, so I thought it looked pretty cool and rugged. And Tony Dodds took me out for a hike, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I remember putting on these, I think it was his mum's hunting boots or hiking boots, and it was February, and we got over. We're at the back of bloody hell, what's her name?
They sort of go either between Wanaka and Hawea, or they go out the back of the Maniatotos as well. They've got a block up there somewhere.
There was some famous lady, Shania Twain, Mark Twain's.
Oh yeah, I know.
I think that's what it was. I don't know if they still together.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a rom-com story there, but anyway, what happened was we went off the back of his property. I remember it was stinking hot, probably 30 degrees down south, no breeze, and we're hiking on hoof. We're down in the 7th Gully, and we come over this ridge looking for red stags, and there's a chamois buck there. And Tony said to me, mate, like, I've never seen one of these really in the wild. I've never shot one. I think you should probably shoot it. And I was like, oh, bloody oath. And this thing was sort of barking at us and rucking its feet in the scree slope like it was going to charge us. And anyway, I dispatched it with one shot, which was nice. It dropped dead straight away and carried the chamois out. And I remember getting at like the end of like a 9-hour day, and all my toenails had fallen off. And I was in a lot of pain, and I was like, wow, this is really tough. And I remember having that Spates beer at the end of it, and I was like, that's how you earn a bloody beer. And ever since then, I've been hooked. And I think from that point on, I went and liked a few pages on Facebook, and big game hunting was the one that stood out like dog's balls. And I was always fascinated. I was like, this guy's really cool. And he ran a competition to win a flying seeker hunt at Black Basin down in Taupo. And for you and a mate, it gets filmed. I was like, thanks, mate. And entered in there. I think I only put my first name. And at the end of the month, my boss comes up to me and goes, hey, Ant, some guy, Ben, says you've won a competition. And sure enough, it went from there. I went down to Taupo. I took Anthony Borich, who I don't know if he was still playing for the All Blacks at that stage. But he'd never been hunting as well. And we went for a seeker hunt, and that's how I met Ben. And one thing about Ben is, like, he's a bloody humble bloke. He's actually one of the neatest dudes I've ever met, and I've learned so much from him. So ever since then, I'll just invest in hunts. I'll fly down, go do a tar hunt, go do a red stag hunt, and it got to the point, like, you know, you're paying for his time and whatnot, but I was paying for education in the wild. You know, that's the way I saw it. It was like me doing a university course, because out there in the wild, it's tough work. You know, there's a lot of lessons and a lot of learnings, and I'm still learning. Like, I learned a lot on this elk trip with him. We had a couple of Barneys because we got separated. But hey, that's part of the relationship. You know, it's part of the journey. And yeah, I consider him to be one of my good mates now, and hell of a bloke. Yeah, so that's how it all started.
Yeah, and so when you say you got separated, what did you just have any walkie-talkies or
nah,
rhinos or anything like that?
Yeah, he's got your classic, your Garmin set. I don't even know what they are. I don't know the technical terms. And reaches. Yeah. And in the outback of Idaho as well, there's a lot of there was bears and whatnot, and so he had a Glock as well. We went through Glock training, but a couple of times we got separated looking for. He managed to put an arrow in a couple of elk over there, and it's sort of like, it's steep country, really steep country, but then there's a lot of pine forest and whatnot, and big ridges, and the sort of terrain and the curves of the landscape make it quite hard to see people sometimes. You know, you might be a couple of meters difference, but we got lost a couple of times for a couple of hours. I'll tell you later in the story what happens, but it's definitely put a boot up my ass, you know, to take it a bit more seriously and not take it for granted that you're going to get back in one piece. Yeah.
No, I know that feeling. I feel like you. I sort of, you know, go with mates and learn a lot on the way, and don't have much success. But walking in up to Murray Creek once, we took the ridgeline up to the hut. I think it's called Moonlight and Roses, and it was just the matter of being around a face and my mate going underneath me, and then we were just like, fuck, where's everybody gone?
Yeah, and it's safety as well, mate. Like, it's not nice seeing Ben with an angry face, but the only thing I can do, and I do well, is just be brutally honest. You know, I'm a pretty black and white person, so and guys, a bit different to girls. You know, we sort of just take it on the chin and get on with it. You know, it's not like you hold grudges, especially when you're sleeping with the dude. You know, so it's. It's good times, mate. And you look back at that, and it's what you miss, you know.
Yeah.
You miss those moments.
And so, how did the MIA tent go over there? Did you need the fireplace, or was it a bit too warm for that?
We didn't. Well, when we first got there, I tell you what, I probably lost a couple of liters just in sweat, just looking at the ridge lines where we were. It was hot, man. Idaho was 32 degrees. It was a desert, sort of like you picture New Zealand on its hottest day without a breeze. And the two Yanks, Zach and Brandon, they came back. They'd already done I think they did like 14 miles, which I think it equates to about 8 Ks in a day. And they're like, yeah, we've gone through like a couple of gallons of water each. Yeah, all the metrics are different there, so that's about 3 liters. And I was like, okay, this is going to be tough. This is going to be a Daryl toughie. And sure enough, like the next couple of days after that was it wasn't too bad because you're walking up the valley floor, so it's quite sheltered by the trees. And then you've also got a bit of a nice breeze coming into you. So during the day you could sort of escape it, but when you're climbing up high to altitude, that's when you're sort of right by the sun's ring piece, and it was burning you to a crisp. So but it did change. The temperatures went from 32 degrees, and then one night I remember there was a thunderstorm, and we're watching these sort of on the last light, these bulls bugling, and it started snowing a little bit. So we had almost like all 4 seasons in 12 days, which was quite nice. It was very easy to walk during the cold than it was in the night, in the heat, in the middle of the heat.
Yeah. And so what was the plan for hunting them? Sort of get up high and then chase down on top of them into the wind, or what was the vibe?
So what happened, which obviously we had no clue. I always had confidence in Ben because he's probably got 20 years under his belt of experience. He's done a little bit of bow hunting. I know he's got that one video on YouTube where he arrows a pig and it's got like 10 million views, and he's got a stag, and so he's done a little bit. Let's not forget that I've never shot anything in my life with a bow and arrow. So I was the one that's sort of on the back foot straight away. And with the two Yanks there was a bit of an art to bugling. So a bit different to like roaring in a stag, where you can probably use an old Pringles box and give it your best bravado through a can. It wasn't too hard. Like the bugle, it's quite a high pitched kind of ghostly sound, and then it finishes with a bit of a grunt, and these dudes have got these sort of big bugle bloody pipes, and they use a reed, like a cow reed, in their mouth, and we struggled for like 2 weeks. We tried the reed and we couldn't get the right frequency, and it's like you sort of put it in the top of your palate of your mouth, and you sort of like you say like the word like hiss, and it makes this like quite a meow. Yeah, I don't know how it goes, but it's different to like a cow call in New Zealand. Very high pitched sound, and these guys had it on the string. So very fortunate enough to have them there. And basically, what happened, like day one, you probably couldn't get it any better. We had the perfect scenario. We walked up this gully. We started about 5 o'clock in the morning. This valley floor, and about a K, and you let a bugle out. It's still dark, and you listen. It's just like this eerie sound. You can hear the wind. It's a beautiful. Every hunter would know. That crisp, beautiful morning. There's nothing but nature, and you're listening out for a sound, and then you walk up another 500 meters, and you let out another bugle. And this was only the 3rd of September, so it was very early on in the rut. And sure enough, we heard this faint bugle, and we're like, oh yeah, there's something up the top of the valley. And we make our way up there. It gets closer and closer, and we sort of got to like a head basin, and from that point on, the bugle was getting louder and louder. So what happened was, Ben and myself, the Yanks told us to split up. So we split up about maybe 50 meters apart, and we got to points like in front of a tree, and you get your rangefinder out, and you start ranging different channels that this bull might come down. So range a log over there, or like a nice little shrub over there, and you have 25 yards, 35 yards, 40 yards, 16 yards, and you sort of know these all in the back of your mind. These sort of shooting lanes that this bull might come through. Anyway, I remember looking down, and Ben was about 40 meters from me, and I was sort of in a shooting lane. I was like, okay, I can't shoot maybe, in this direction, and because he's down there. And I was a bit higher up, and sure enough, the guys that are bugling, they sit about 50 meters behind you. So these bulls are quite receptive to the bugle. Obviously, it's getting angrier and angrier. He's protecting his cows, and he'll walk exactly to the pinpoint of where that bugle's coming from, right to the meter of it. It's quite amazing. And we're standing there, and the pine forest it's pretty open, so a lot of dead stumps, and so you can hear this bull coming in. Sure enough, I get some eyes on some cows, and I was like, holy heck. The first thing I was thinking is like, at this stage, I had a bad dinner, and I really needed this shit. So like with the nerves, like it wasn't good. I was like, okay, I'm getting close to touching cloth here. This is not great. But the nerves were I've never experienced anything like this in my life. I think it's something to do with bow hunting and how big these beasts are. Anyway, you hear all these breaking of twigs, and this big bull, 6x6, that's what they say over there, comes steaming through the shrub. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is huge. And it's built like a horse. Sort of looks like a rodeo bull, in terms of girth and strength and stuff. But then the antlers on these things are just huge with the massive throwback. And I remember we could coming through, and it was coming straight between me and Ben. And with all Ben's hunting knowledge, you thought he would have let out a little meow, meow, and to get it to stop, but he didn't. He has a shot at 40 meters, 40 yards, and it goes underneath it. He just misses it. And this thing doesn't get spooked at all. It's not like, I don't think an arrow spooks it as such, but it's sort of just walked up towards me, and it stood in front of me at 12 yards. So I'm thinking, like, we're at 2 hours, an hour and a half into this hunt, and it's just standing there staring at me, and it can't really see me. I've got a branch that's sort of not obstructing my shooting lane, but it's sort of coming out, going over its shoulder, but it looks like a barn door's right in front of me. But I'm like, holy heck! I was like, I'm gonna punish this thing right now. And I stand there. It felt about like 5 minutes. It's just staring at me. So I'm not moving. I've got my release aid in the D loop. I'm ready to draw back when it turns its head, but I need to drop down to one knee to get a clear shooting lane. And I've been shooting quite a few arrows, and I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm like, this thing is dead. And sure enough, it lets out a big bugle. I just remember seeing the steam coming out its nose, and like turns its head, and I drop down on one knee, but I draw the bow sideways, so like not back, like straight and like parallel lines that you probably should be doing it. I draw it out sideways to try almost like get my head under like this shrub so I can see it. And mate, when I'm halfway through the drawback, the arrow falls out the nock, it like hits the side, arrow falls out, and then I go back and I dry fire under the pressure.
Oh shit!
Yeah, and so it doesn't do anything. It just stands there, and I put the arrow back in. I was like, oh, I don't even know if my bow's broken from the dry fire or what's going on. And then it sort of walks back, and I'm drawn back, and I could have had a shot about 40 yards, but like I was just thinking to myself, I'm here with two Americans. If I wound it, and it's not a proper shot, I feel like I could get in a lot of trouble. I've just met these dudes, so I pull out, and we didn't spook it at all. It just sort of trotted away, and then we sat down and we laughed. And I remember looking at Ben, and I go, mate, like, me and you've just both had a shot on the first morning. Those two Yanks are laughing their heads off. They're like, mate, we've been hunting out for 10 years, and that's probably the best morning we've ever had. To the start, and I was like, and I just remember looking at Ben and going, man, we're going to have to work hard now, bro. And in a weird way, it's like I was sort of glad I didn't get it, or he didn't get it, because it's like 2.5 months you've just taken it up. If we got it first morning, the whole hunt would have been completely different, and we would have filled our tags, both of us, I reckon, in 2 days, because your confidence is high. Sure enough, mate, it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done after that. We're easily 30 Ks on foot every single day, walking up to altitudes of 1,200 feet, which is higher than Mount Cook. The air is pretty thin up there, so, someone like Ben, who's fit as a fiddle, he was struggling. I was struggling. Like, um, it was tough, man. And the thing over there is like the terrains are so beautiful. Like you're there, you come across a black bear. We came across a black bear one day. It was 30 yards in front of us, and those Yanks said like they're like, you can take that, like your elk tag swaps out for a black bear as well if you wanted. And we're like, we're thinking about it, like because we're like, will we even get another opportunity to bull elk? But mate, it's different. It was incredible. That whole first morning sort of set the standard of what we expected, and it only got harder from there, So
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you've had a first hit, and you might be addicted. I'd say based on that story.
oh mate, like the thing is, like, a long story short, I never fulfilled my tag. So you always look back, and I've got it like sitting next to my bed. I've got it framed because I'll probably go and I want to go do it next year,
Yeah.
And I will till I go get it. I think it's all about execution. And you watch, I was saying to those Yanks, and they sort of laughed at it. Like, you look at guys like Cam Haynes and stuff who we think is like an absolute jockey to, bow hunting, and he makes it look cool and stuff. And he runs 40 miles a day, and he does, shoots 100 arrows a morning. Like, but he's actually got it bang on. Like, you do all that work, you might be walking 30 Ks for that one opportunity. And if you can't execute it, then you've just stuffed up the whole hunt. So, like there was days where I remember, I think it was probably, this is when me and Ben were by ourselves. We walked in, we spotted a massive bull, man. And you might have seen it on his Instagram and stuff. It's the one that we want to go back for next year, or he wants to. It had like 33 cows with it. Which is always hard because there's so many prying eyes, But he also had 2 satellite bulls with him. One was a 5x6, maybe, uneven 5x6. And the one morning, this 5x6 was feeding down the valley, and the bigger bull was up the valley in this head basin with its 30 cows. And I snuck in from 800 meters down to 30 yards. I was behind a tree, drawn back, waiting for this thing just to step out a couple of meters, and it was another sitting duck, and the wind changed. And just like that, the wind, mate, once that goes up your ass, you're stuffed again. And it's painstakingly hard because you're sneaking in there, like you're figuring out, should I take my shoes off? Because you don't want to, step on the leaf, and set it off. But that was the beauty of the bow hunt. Like, it just teaches you patience. It teaches you stealth. And it obviously came down like the first morning. It was all about execution, and I couldn't do it. So it just shows how much of a novice I am, and and how hard it is actually to fulfill that tag. Because I think, was it in the area we're hunting? I think only 10%. 10% only fulfill their tag every year. So it's hard. It's hard, and like apparently the Yanks don't like to walk far.
Yeah.
So if you're Kiwi, you've got a bit of a ticker, you're in good stead straight away. You're a step ahead of everybody else. So I think a lot of Kiwis would go right over there. But yeah, it's amazing. It's a lot of lessons, which is cool.
Yeah. And what did the Yanks think of the stubbies, mate? Did they think you're about?
Oh yeah, they had a good laugh. Before every single time I've been hunting with Ben and we haven't been successful, I always go. We always hunt in stubbies anyway, but we always put a bear in our pack as spates. We're like, it's a lucky bear. So when we got there, I always said to him, I was like, we've both got a set of Maori AB shorts that we've been gifted from numerous players, and we wore those, and those Yanks were just like, geez, what the blue blazers are you boys up to? But in the end, obviously, when the boys got the job done, like they were like, hey, like they might start hunting it in shorts, and they actually did. Last couple of days, they started wearing shorts. So, and I'm going to send a pair over to the lads who do guiding and stuff, because it's all myths, man. I honestly think that it's not what you look like, in the camo and stuff. It's about how you get to the animal without being detected, I guess. But I reckon the wind's probably the biggest thing, eh?
Yeah.
So we proved that theory wrong for them.
Yeah, someone who just got myself a pair of first light pants and came down there, was like, well, what colour do you want? And I said, well, I'll pretend to know what I'm looking like, and I got the camo, but and
Yeah.
hey, first day wearing them, I managed to pull it off. But I'm going to be honest, that was a back paddock.
No, good. Mate. Like, I think I went for the Stony Creek setup, and it looks cool, you know. And to be honest, it's nice and breathable and stuff, and it's good for the long grass and keeping away the flies and stuff. But you know, if you want a bit of colour in the pins, hey, go for the stubbies. It's all good stuff.
Absolutely, man. And mate, something I wanted to say to you, you know, podcast, it sort of seems a bit like life coaching. You know, it just seems that we all just sort of go on each other's podcasts, and I don't know if anybody's actually listening to us, but
you can start somewhere, mate. It's all good.
Yeah, that's right. And I heard it when you're on Jim Cawthorn's, you know, fuck up files that you're the balls and heart balls and head, whatever.
Yeah, head, heart, and balls.
Head, heart, and
balls.
balls.
Well, I don't have any.
Is Steffi the head?
No. The head would be Grant Nisbet because he's just the brains trust, and Steffi is her heart because he's a Manawatu. He's a Manawatu stalwart. He loves his place, and hey, how are you?
Say good day.
G'day. Yeah, it's Steffi. He's a Manawatu boy, so he's quite loyal and passionate about that. So, yeah. No, the podcast thing is good, man. You know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of stuff. Jim Cawthorn's one, hell of a series. If you want to laugh, a crude laugh.
Absolutely. I don't know if you listened into that finale with Di Henwood, but he was talking about the gathering in Nelson. And it's just, you know, it's one of those ones that, and you being a sort of a ambassador and on-stage man for Rhythm and Vines, you'd probably relate really well to some of the absolute scenes that you see at some of these festivals.
Oh, mate, these guys have seen some good stuff in its time, and Rhythm and Vines, mate, geez, hell of an experience. It's sort of, it got the better of me. I did 5 years there hosting there. I'm sort of glad that I've nipped that in the bud though, because there's a stage in your life where you want to grow up, you know, and mature, and knocking on nearly on 31, you sort of, and I'm not married and I don't have a kid. I like yourself, so you sort of putting all your cards in front of you. You're like, okay, well, let's change this course a little bit, you know. So
yeah.
Good character building for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's on there. How did the sort of short and wise thing come about? How did you all guys come together?
By the way, Teranaki's just scored.
Dear.
The hell of a game though. 46 minutes. Taranaki 5, Southland 0. So Southland have done well. Tuarangi Walden. Anyway, it's short and wide. So short and wide, for the people that are listening, it was a one and done TV show that was on TVNZ Duke with 2 punters that I actually met on the piss separately. I remember I was at a flat party probably, I don't know when it was, and I met George Harper. He's a good-looking bloke. He's got some yap. The guy can talk. And we just got started yarning, and he wanted to be in media. I think he did like a radio degree or something like that. And I did communications, and I always wanted to write a TV show. And we came up with this concept of writing, you know, the whole thing was actually a gag. We used to go out and tell girls in town that we're TV presenters, and we went that next weekend and we printed business cards, and the business was called Short and Wide. So the whole thing was smoke and mirrors. And we'd approach people like New Zealand Cricket and the All Blacks, and we were like, you guys need our content and stuff. They're like, what do you do? And we're like, we had nothing to show them. So Lee Hart, who's that guy, this Fuja and whatnot, I'd been working for him for about 8 years, and he gave us all his camera stuff, and we started filming stuff from our flat garage, the sports interviews from people that we knew. And then I pitched it to another guy I knew who, when I was dating a girl, and he was dating her mate. And he owned Real Factory, so they own all the slow-mo cameras for Sky TV. And they invested in it. They put some money into it. They shot a pilot for us, so we got all our friends over to this sort of bar in this shed where they've got the HQ, and we just got pissed where Jimmy Nation, Art Green was the bachelor at the time, and Anthony Borich, and we filmed the pilot, and then they got picked up on TV, and yeah, it was good. I met AJ as well, who was the mascot for the Highlanders, I think, the Rooster at that stage, and he's a very funny guy, very clever.
Tackle that streak here with absolutely
and both just great Roosters, and eventually got short and wide, which was sort of very, very, very similar to Sports Cafe. I'm not going to lie, we stole probably that whole idea, and yeah, we did a show, and it was fun while it lasted. We just didn't get funding for it again, so all the lads have sort of gone their separate ways now, and it's all good stuff though, you know.
Yeah, no, your producer Tamega's got me in serious trouble.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, sheep.
Yeah, so yeah, sheep. So in my final year of uni, I needed a little bit of extra cash. It's not cheap living in Auckland, and so I decided that having worked at the Cook in Dunedin, and thought I'd sign up to old Freeman and Gray and Ponsonby there. And
fags, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was doing all right. It was good time serving drinks. And then I sort of found out that my 16-year-old ex-girlfriend, and being a 16-year-old male full of far too much testosterone, I had done the dirty on her in terms of, you know, texting other people. And and for a 15-year-old girl, I guess it's something that you might hang on to. But yeah, Tim was friends with such ex, and he was up there one night and he said, Ryan, mate, if I pay for 2 rums, can you give me 3? So I said, no. And then he eventually peer pressured me into it, and so I split the 2 over 3, and then of course she went downstairs, told her partner, and I was out the door.
Oh, brilliant! Is she still single? Or?
I don't know. She was dating the one of the Cook brothers at the time, but I don't know.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I don't know where that is these days.
She'll be swimming in cash now. The Cookathon, mate, that's it's a great place. I remember going down there for a Rio week, and I cooked my ass, really. I went down as a Power Ranger. My mates shaved my head. I was doing these things called, actually can't probably talk about it on here. But I shaved my head, and when I was a Power Ranger, one of the great days down in Dunn is if you ever go down there. I don't know if they still do it. The Cook's not there anymore, is it?
Well, I hear it's back in business, but yeah, no, I was lucky enough to work security at the final Cookathon. But I tell you what, working security for the Cook is a pretty easy job. You basically stand around inside and, you know,
get numbers.
Yeah, dance to the music and pick up the odd empty bottle of beer and give it back to the bar staff. It was not hard. I can tell you that.
That's where I started my hunting career, but it wasn't. I was looking for my bush pig. All this stuff.
Dear. So would you do the communications that you had to do the commute down to such events?
It's just I did it up in Auckland. I stayed up there. I was playing cricket in Auckland, so for a while, I played for counties, and then I was involved in the ND setup. So I never really branched out from Auckland. If I went to Otago University, I would have derailed my cricket career even more. Probably would have been a good thing in hindsight, because it was a waste of time. I ended up bowling triple bounces and never got it back. So that's why I went to university to get a degree. It's always good watching all the dudes who I played with, i.e. your Kane Williamsons, who used to captain me for 5 years, just creaming it. You know, you see all these Bolties, Corey Andersons. It was a hell of a crew. And yeah, I'm just living in this slipstream now, mate. So it's all good stuff.
Your twilight cricket, you know, you get out there and smash a few people around.
Yeah, well, I try to. I normally abuse them a lot more than anything else. Like, we got the Suns. We called the Suns cricket. Well, it used to be called the Sons of Pitches. We play in the last man stands, but the Suns. We've actually got our AGM meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, where it's just a big layer up, and we select who's going to be our chair, head of social, head of logistics, head of catering. And every Wednesday night, because we play in the top league, we get together. It's actually one of the greatest teams I've ever been part of. We get together, we have beers, we have a couple of singers with a bit of ring on the banger, and we just try clear the hip and try hit a boundary every ball. And geez, it's fun. A social sport. If you can get into it, you get into a good team environment with your mates. You're living.
Yeah, man. And that is there now a UK branch of Suns? Like, you know, plenty of those guys are of that age that they on the OE.
Yeah,
doing the 2
I think
years.
they're doing that. They've got the Winnie Greens, I think it is. No, forget the Winnie Blues. They're called the Winnie Greens, and I actually think they might have won the comp in the first year. I don't know. They've got some serious bowlers. You're thinking about all the guys that play Prem cricket, and they go over there. The lawyers, their bankers, they're doing quite well, and then that's where they let the steam out, and they're just very talented players. They probably could have played for their province back here, So, no, it's great stuff, mate. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, and then like you said, the social aspect that ties in with the varsity squids. You can't talk to Niterl without talking about the varsity squids. You're a bit large for that team. You're a bit large for that team. Although I look at Sam Hall and I wonder how the hell that guy gets under 85, but it happens.
Sam Hall is one of the most gifted sports players I've ever in any format. He is unreal. Incredible rugby player, probably the best Suns player Squids player to ever come through those ranks, actually. But yeah, I'm a bit too heavy. I was actually, before my hunting trip, I was weighing, I reached triple digits. I was 100 kilos, my first time in my life. That's probably because of the excess boozing I've been doing from Thursday to Sunday. But nothing I'm not proud of. But I dropped 8 kilos, so I'm down to 91.5 now after that hunt. So it just shows how much you actually exert. Yeah, I like to thank my sponsors, the Fat Burner tablet company that I've been in. I lost. So I'm trying to keep that off. I actually just made myself a little bit of tuna poke bowl tonight, so something a bit healthier. You don't want to be fat, mate. And a dream of mine is always to play under 85s, but I've got another 6 kegs and probably have to go live in a sauna for about 2 weeks. So it's all good stuff.
No, mate. I think. Sauna might be the right thing, and I reckon some of those guys use the Friday night booze up as a tool to dehydrate and
100%,
and maybe have a couple of yaks as well, which be right.
100%. Well, that's when I come into the squid setup. There, I'm actually the booze coach. So I'm the one that's supplying the alcohol. We've got a couple of minors in there, so I'm the one that's supplying it to the underages, and I'm forcing them. They're on the bottle. The night before, they don't get much sleep, and there was actually a scientific study that came out that you should be able to play off 11 beers. It shouldn't affect the way that you play off 11 beers. So we put that to the test, and I can confirm it's actually a myth. There's a lot of guys that are bent double. They leave everything out on the paddock, including what they ate the night before. So. Squids, hell of a team. They went undefeated a couple of years. We lost in the final this year. But Ryan, it comes down to culture, and those boys there, they breed a really good culture. Play hard, play harder off the pitch, and it is funny. It's really funny, mate. Like I said, social sport. Get up,
Yeah, no, they like you said, culture. That they're not just within themselves; they bring an awesome culture to that varsity rugby club. And
you can't teach culture, mate. You honestly can't teach it. Like it's got to be instilled from the people who are there and they want to be part of like the team. I look at culture at work sometimes, and you can't just go there and try do a social event to get people involved. Like people want it, You have to have the same like-minded people that want to get involved and get their hands dirty. But yeah, it's amazing the Squids culture and the Suns and who it attracts, because everybody's having fun. So people want to have fun. People want to be accepted. People want to be part of a team where there's winning. Winning's always everything, Everybody talks about the winners in life. No one really talks about the losers, So that's why no one really wanted to. I'm surprised you're talking to me about my hunting trip to the States because I'm a loser. I really am.
No, mate. No, it's like I said, it's all about hearing the story and the effort and what you learnt there. Because as a beginner myself, I need to pick up on these little mistakes because I make plenty of them. Get lost, pick wrong spurs, actually look down at my GPS and see that I've been walking around in circles. So
Yeah. Oh, mate, everybody's learning, and like it's not meant to be easy. Like if you knew it overnight, you know, that's the thing. Like when I was with Ben, like what the Yanks were telling us was, was completely different to how we wanted to hunt. And I remember one night we were with them, and we were just like, no, we want to spot and stalk. And we'd already been doing big days. And I remember sitting on this ridge, and we're like, oh, there's the bull. And they're like, I knew one guy didn't want to get up and walk. So we had to walk like another 2 gullies. Like we're probably at an hour and a half of light, and we're like, no, we're going. And me and Ben like looked at it, we're like, no, we're going for it, man. Like he's like, nah. We're like, nah, let's put on your pack. We're going for it. We went to scale bloody 2 valleys and get up there. We got there within 45 minutes, and we were gassed, but we had the opportunity. This thing was 50 yards from us, and it got spooked. So we started doing things differently, and like we're like spot and stalk like that. I remember me and Ben were by ourselves, and I was like, let's just split up so we're not throwing our scent everywhere. But I was like, you go for it, I'll bugle from a distance just to keep that attention on it. And Ben got in went through the bush one morning and shot this absolute monster. And I came down, and we had this plan to meet him down in the valley, and he's like, mate, yeah, shot him. And he's got no emotion, but he's like, yeah, put it in his neck. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, yeah, we got to, he goes, there's heaps of blood. And I was like, oh, man, okay, so it's a good shot. And then we left it about an hour and a half, and we followed this thing for about 1.5 K blood trail. Like, there was so much blood. There was a couple of big spots where it was just like bubbly blood, and we're like, yeah, it's gone into the lungs. We're like, this is great. And it literally looked like someone had got a paintbrush, like a painter, and just painted a line through the grass. We're like, this thing is dead. Surely it's dead. But it went for 1.5 K. Then we went to its last place, and we could see where it bedded, and there's pools of blood there. And then all of a sudden, the blood all dried up, and we couldn't find it. So we left it for the night. The next day, we grid searched a whole basin, like the whole day, like up at Sparrow's Fart, grid searching. We're probably about 10 meters apart, just searching for this thing. Couldn't find it. Did it the next morning after that, couldn't find it, so we just left it. And unfortunately, we never found that one. And we hope that it's still alive, But just that little plan of, Ben's hunting experience, which completely sort of went completely different to the Yanks. It just shows like different people's hunting experience, and even putting in different situations and just adapting to it. We couldn't really bugle, couldn't cow call, so we're like, we have to stalk and get into it. So it was quite cool, eh? And then you had another plan on the last day when we eventually got it. It was every single night and day you could see where these bulls and these cows were feeding to. So they would always go over the lowest point, which is the saddle. They'll feed in and bed into the night, into the pine, or we could see where they're coming out in the mornings, and so we sort of knew where they were tracking for the night. And the night before was perfect. We split up, and he was going to come behind this bull. I was going to walk over his saddle, and I was going to be waiting in the saddle. And sure enough, that's what happened. The wind was perfect. All these cows came first. I was behind a sage bush, but I was 80 yards out. I'd missed it completely. Like I should have been 40 yards in, closer on the lowest part of the saddle, and he would have been, another sitting duck, and I stuffed that up. So you're always learning, but that game plan was perfect. And then the next morning we went to the exact same basin where those 3 were, and I stayed lower and he went higher to sort of see where they'd be flushed out. And Ben managed to put one straight behind his shoulder, so it was perfect. Like, couldn't get better. But this is where it actually got quite funny, because we went to go look for it. There was no blood trail at all, nothing. And this is when we got split up. I ended up chasing another bull with some cows, so I was like, oh, he saw the arrow come out and was hanging out the back because he was shooting quite high. Yeah. And he's like, man, I might have got it a bit too high. Anyway, he went one way, and I was like, oh, I'll go look this way to see. I followed some tracks, and I saw a bull in the distance, and I was like, oh, maybe that's it. And this is when we got split up. I didn't see him for the next 3 hours. I came back to look for him. I was like letting out cow calls. I was trying to let out bugles, do like sort of hear him out. I went onto a ridge line. I was looking through the pine, couldn't find him. So I went back to camp, put all my stuff outside the tent, and I was like, if he gets onto a ridge line, he'll see that I'm back at camp. Because you could sort of, it was about 2 k's away. You could sort of see it with the binos. And sure enough, I sit there, start making some 2-minute noodles, and Ben comes over the hill about 3 hours later, and he's covered in blood. He's got a hoof, like a big leg hanging out the back of his pack, and he's like, where the hell were you? And we sort of have not a bit of an argument, but a bit of constructive feedback for each other. And I was mainly in the wrong, but we should have, kept the finger on the pulse with each other. And he's just like, mate, what if you broke a leg and I don't know where you are? And I was thinking, okay, yeah, he's right. It's pretty bad. And those bull and cow that I actually chased up, I got into 30 yards and I could have shot 3 of them. I had it drawn back. I could have taken the cow, but the thing is, another safety thing, or didn't have a knife on me. So didn't have a knife, didn't know where Ben was. And it's like, how was I going to gut it up? And so I never pulled. So I could have taken out a cow very easily. But I decided not to, because I was like, what if Ben's got his and I should be helping him pack him out? So sure enough, I had to go back with him. And he'd done the whole butchering by himself on this massive beast with this one of these eagle knives. So it's just like one of those blades you put in. It's like a scalpel.
Yeah.
And which would have been a hell of a hard job. But anyway, all this meat was laid out, and we packed up packs and walked out, and we sort of had a beer at the end. And while he drank his beer that was in his pack the whole trip by himself, which I was really gutted about. And we got it done, but you sort of have a debrief, and that's not how you wanted the hunt to end. But it was a great feeling, seeing that we'd found it eventually, especially after we'd searched for the other one for like a day and a half. But yeah, a lot of lessons, mate. And geez, I've come back to New Zealand. I've reflected a lot on it, and it's like, how can I be a better person? If I want to go out in the wild and stuff. And hunting's a great thing. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you patience. It teaches you to be prepared, like, every single night before you go to bed. It doesn't matter how many Ks you've done on foot, make sure that you pack your bag properly, that you've got your water, your water's full, that you've got a knife, that you've got your in reach, like stuff I didn't have, like real vital stuff. And that's a game changer. So I've come back to New Zealand and I've ordered an in reach now, and I've gone and bought a knife, like real simple stuff. Now I can go, if I got lost, it'll be a different story, and we wouldn't be having the same argument, every single time. So lesson for all, just be prepared, because especially when you're in another country and you're in terrain that's pretty unforgiving, mate. You slip and you fall and you're stuffed, So, yeah, hell of a trip. Recommend it to anyone. Bit expensive going over first up, like buying the bow and the flight's about $5,000, and then the America's expensive. You got to buy food for 12 days in the bush. You got to put them in, buy bugle stuff, bear spray if you're feeling insecure, which we did. So there's a lot of, it comes with a bit of a price, but to see those bulls bugling in front of you from 12 yards, for any hunter that's got the bug, has experienced the roar and wants to be in front of an animal that's almost twice the size of it, it's an experience I've never experienced in my life, I guess. I guess you've seen your kids get born, which will be pretty up there, I guess. But it'll send any grown man just shaking, So just keep at it, mate. I'm starting exactly the same place where you are with the bow. But the beauty about it is how good people are on social media. Like, I shot Remy Warren a message while we were on the Piss and Bows Mill the last night, and he was responding. He was talking to us. He's over here in March, and we're like, yeah, we'll come in, like, catch up with you. And he was all for it. And Dre from the Hunters Club, he's been outstanding. That dude, like, never met the bloke in my life. I've done some stuff for David Shaw before, but Dre's so receptive, like, in terms of answering questions, and like, all those guys, everybody seems to get around each other, especially in the hunting world in New Zealand, unless you've got a big ego, which there's no place for it in New Zealand. So it's so easy just to reach out and go, hey, I want to come out for a hunt with you and stuff. It's perfect environment in New Zealand, and I think there's a good base of hunters that are, willing to get their hands dirty, go for a hike, and just share some good yarn. So it's great stuff,
Absolutely, and I'm pretty keen now to get Dre back on the show now. I've picked up the bow. Not only is he going to give us some fitness pointers, so you'll have to listen out for that one. But I'll have to pick his brain a bit more. And like you said, the community, I put up those images of me practicing for the first time this morning, and straight away, even people I didn't tag in the video, flicked me a pointer or two, and it's just like, this is shit on.
Man, everybody's just social media is a real powerful tool, for promotion and demotion, I guess, if you're but it's pretty cool, like, especially in my line of work as well, mate. Like the amount of people that are receptive just to get on radio shows and stuff these days, and I just flick them a message, like, it's incredible, so just stick at it, especially if you're down south. Hawke's Bay's got real good hunting down there, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. So I was talking to somebody today about the Kaimais. I went in there probably 10 times or so, and I spooked one deer. I was of the belief, like most people are, that there's no deer up there, but no, there are.
Yeah.
And went into the Kawikas twice and bumped 3, and then like last Saturday, where I was on the edge of the Kawikas, and holy shit, they were everywhere.
Yeah. Well, that's what you want, mate. And I guess, like, with any hunter, like, some of them don't give away their spots, and if you can get onto private land, it's a bonus. But, like, if you're not out there doing it and trying it, and a lot with these Yanks, like, I was pretty impressed. They got this app over there called Onyx or Onyx.
Yeah, I know the one.
Incredible. Like, it was amazing. Someone should be putting that into New Zealand with all the tracks and 4-wheel drives and all the access tracks is really incredible. But the amount of research they put into the place is awesome, eh? So it just shows that it's not just about dumping yourself. Sometimes it is just going for a walk, but they do a lot of research, and it's awesome.
Got another visitor.
That's all right. How many ankle biters have you got? Just one? Hey, how's it going?
Just this week, girl. She wants me to read Brown Bear Barney. She wants to read it to you, I think.
Yeah. She'll probably teach me a few things about reading. I can't even read, mate. So.
Yeah, this is probably going back to that story about losing the job at Freeman and Gray. She's probably going to be my payback for that sort of 16, 15-year-old.
Bloody hell. Yeah. We all make mistakes. I've lost a few jobs in my time. It's character building. You just never do it again.
No. So what's in store for you, mate? As you said, no more rhythm and violence.
I've sort of knocked the M-scene on the head for a bit. Like, I just wanted to have a break so I could go hunting and fishing the weekends because it's taking up all my time. But I'm currently just doing this show with Grant Nisbet and stuff, the radio show, doing a bit of stuff at PAB and Trackside, and exploring other opportunities at Sky at the moment. So some stuff in the pipeline. Hopefully doing some presenting stuff, maybe cricket, some new shows there. So yeah, that's in the near future.
Awesome,
mate. That's the goal. Yeah.
And where do people find the show and find you on social? And is there going to be the film of Ben and Ants hit America? Or?
No, I don't. We actually did film quite a bit, and then I've got some stuff on my GoPro. I haven't even looked at it. But after about day 2, you sort of put the cameras away and you're just like, I just want to concentrate and get this done, because you're sort of in scenarios where you're roaring a bull. And I remember the second night we spooked a bull, should have had it, was coming through the bush again, and the guy that I was with, he goes, step up, he goes, take 4 more steps forward to get another shooting lane, and as soon as I stepped down, I was looking down because I was so nervous to make sure that my release aid was in my D hoop, and I wasn't looking up where the sounds were, and I spooked it. It was just standing right there, and I was so gutted. It was another monster, and like that's another thing. Like, be prepared and make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. Make sure you're looking up from where the sound is, not looking down at the ground. And I stepped down too far, but anyway, After that, I was like, flag that. I'm not going to film anymore because I was getting out my phone and I was like filming the bugling and stuff, and I was only like 40 yards away, and I was like, this is stupid. Like, just concentrate on getting it done. So we put the phone away, and I guess like big days, you're getting a bit despondent and stuff, and some days you're laughing, and so we didn't actually film, I don't think, in the end. But yeah, hopefully it'll comes out. But like, yeah, Ben Tumata, big game hunting on Instagram. He's got the most. I'm sort of picky and choosy of what I share on mine because I try to put all my work stuff on there, so and people don't want to be seeing me cutting up deer all the time. And even though I'm very passionate about it,
Yeah, you gotta be careful with that sort of stuff in the current.
Just a nice balance, Like people don't take me too seriously at the prison, but then when I'm in hunting mode, I'm actually quite a serious bloke. So it's like, has this guy got bipolar or so? Like it's like, yeah, I just choose my moments, but. Any footage and stuff, I actually might look through my GoPro this weekend and see what's on there. I don't know. The guy that we went with the Yang, Zach, he owns this place called Montana Wild or this thing. So he had a bit of a following, and I think he got in a bit of trouble for some illegal fishing or some bull trout or something. But like he filmed it, put it out, and he didn't know, and he got a lot of flack. So like the Yanks didn't forgive him for that. But he does also this like hunting photography page where he teaches people how to take photography in the wilderness, which is epic. You should check it out. Yeah. The guys are pretty incredible. So yeah, no, unfortunately no footage. I know Ben's got some stuff of some bulls and stuff, but yeah, we didn't manage to get that. So
nice, mate. Well, we might park it there. What would you leave people with from a media personality, hunting enthusiast point of view?
In terms of what? What do you want me to say?
Oh, probably. I don't know, something that you think's doing you well at the moment.
Yeah.
That you sort of maybe you're living your life by maybe.
Okay. If I just well, I think people take life too seriously. Firstly, yeah. So I think it's so important to do something that you're really passionate about. It sounds pretty cliche, but like. Something that I've always evolved like my whole life around is shake hands, put smiles on faces. Like I reckon your network is your net worth. Never say no. Like never say no to something. Like if it's going to challenge you, always say yes because you don't know who you're going to meet. There's so many awesome people in New Zealand. Go to that party. Go just for one beer, because you never know who you're going to meet. You might meet your new hunting partner. So shake hands, put smiles on faces. I guess that's the greatest thing, and just be a bloody good bastard, Be a good person.
Absolutely. We had that from an Aussie at the start of the week, and we're finishing off with the Kiwi up the guts version at the end of the week. It's bloody good. Mate, I'm going to press stop there, and I'll apologise to everybody for the.
Thanks so much for your time, mate. You're an absolute legend. Appreciate it.